Hello Internet, welcome to my channel. I'm ChameleonX, and once again I've been ambushed by the announcement of a new Monster Week, an event where YouTubers in the tabletop gaming space all come together to release content related to a specific type of creature, in this case, Fey. Ergo, I had to set aside my crippling procrastination and self-doubt and kick into high gear to join in the fun. This is Creature Crossover, a series where we take a creature, or type of creature, from an established franchise and convert them for use in D&D and other tabletop game systems. In honor of the theme of this Monster Week, I've chosen to take one of the most iconic fairy creatures from the world of the Elder Scrolls, Spriggans. Just briefly, if you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Comments, criticism, and suggestion is always welcome. So without further ado, let's get into it. The Spriggan has appeared in every mainline Elder Scrolls game since their debut in Daggerfall in 1996. Though their appearance has changed over the years, like most other classic TES monsters, their basic theme and abilities have remained relatively consistent. Spriggans are woodland spirits that manifest in pristine wilderness, with bodies formed of wood, vines, leaves, and so on. In almost all of their appearances, they assume the form of humanoid females, though in the Elder Scrolls Online there are Spriggans or Spriggan-adjacent creatures that assume the form of beasts, like horses, bears, centaurs, tigers, wolves, and so forth, which serve the player as mounts. There are also polymorph collectibles that allow the player to transform into a Spriggan-like form, but the canonicity of these is debatable at best. Beginning in Skyrim and continuing into ESO and the spin-offs Elder Scrolls, Legends, Blades, and Castles, Spriggans are portrayed as far less humanoid than in previous installments. They appear instead as woody husks made of twisted vines and gnarled bark, which appear to be animated by luminous spirits that buzz around like swarms of insects. In all of its appearances prior to the Elder Scrolls Legends, Spriggans were always pictured with two human-like legs and a bipedal gait. Starting with their card art in Legends and featuring far more prominently in the Elder Scrolls Online, most Spriggans are shown with a mass of root-like tentacles instead of feet, which they use to crawl across the ground like an unholy mix of Groot and Ursula.
Poor unfortunate Groot.
Notably, the Spriggan polymorph the player can acquire in ESO still uses the bipedal form, though this is most likely due to time and engine limitations on animation sets than anything lore-related. In Elder Scrolls Castles, the Fallout Shelter-esque mobile spin-off, they return to the two-legged stance as well. In any case, when the Spriggan's body is killed, the swarm can be seen flying away, leaving behind a lifeless husk. The color of the swarm seems to be related to the strength and/or alignment of its magical power, and taken together, this seems to imply that the physical body of the Spriggan is merely an organic construct that is animated by the spirit swarm inside of it, like a wood golem of sorts. According to Nord legends, Spriggans were formed by the goddess Kine, and can be seen guarding relics and locations sacred to her. These myths also claim that Spriggans are actually immortal spirits, and each time they are killed, they return stronger, which explains the presence of matrons, earth mothers, and more powerful Spriggan variants throughout the franchise. In ESO, they are also shown to often associate with Ifri, the patron deity of the Bosmer, and many creatures that serve or embody Ifri's will, at least superficially resemble Spriggans. Wild hunt animals, which are claimed to have been mutated by exposure to a Bosmeri ritual, also resemble Spriggans. Although this could be explained by the devs reusing assets, the thematic connection is somewhat intuitive. Kinnereth is the goddess of the winds, the sea, rain, and storms, and the Nords believe her breath created the first life atop the throat of the world. Ifri, as the first of the earth bones, formed the framework on which the laws of nature in Tamriel would be built. It's not a stretch that the two gods might be allies, or at the very least have overlapping spheres of influence. Notably, sacred trees like the Eldergleam are guarded by Spriggans, as are several locations in Valenwood which have cultic significance. There are also several creatures which seem to have thematic connections to the Spriggans. Nereids in ESO are similarly female nature spirits, in this case associated with bodies of water. Lurchers are wood golems animated by magic, essentially a reverse-engineered Spriggan animated by mortal magic instead of nature. Depending on your viewpoint, wisp mothers could also be added to this category, although I personally prefer the Falmer Revenant hypothesis. Iliadi, many-eyed forest giants mentioned in lore but never seen in-game, are said by some sources to be related to Spriggans, and the rare colossal Spriggans seen in ESO might lend some weight to this theory. Gnarls, found in the Shivering Isles, may be a form of corrupted Spriggan or a Daedric mockery of the real thing. Another creature mentioned only in lore is the marsh giant, which, contrary to its name, is not related to true giants, but is rather a woodland spirit native to Argonia, and whom are described as cousins of the Spriggans. In virtually all portrayals, Spriggans are stalwart and relentless guardians of the natural world and undeveloped wilderness in particular. They evidently despise logging, hunting, and even picking flowers and mushrooms for the purposes of alchemy. They are almost invariably hostile to anyone who intrudes on their sacred spaces, though in Daggerfall alone they can be pacified and spoken to by those who know their language. They have a deep mystical connection with the other creatures that inhabit their forests and glades as well. Nearly all Spriggans have the ability to summon beasts to fight at their side, typically black bears, and some also have the ability to magically command naturally spawned animals in the region to aggro against the player, fighting to the death on the Spriggans' behalf. Anyway, this is largely the extent of the lore we get about Spriggans in the franchise. They do produce a variety of useful items to collect, but we can go over that in the plot hooks section. So now that we know more or less what they are, what can Spriggans actually do? The abilities of a Spriggan have steadily evolved while remaining more or less consistent since their introduction. In Daggerfall, their only means of attack was to run up to you and smack you with their claws, and this has largely remained the foundation of their toolkit to this day. Starting in Tez 3's Blood Moon expansion, they gained the familiar ability to regenerate, which has appeared in every mainline game since. In Blood Moon, the Nord legends of slain Spriggans returning stronger than before is quite literal, as each time you kill a Spriggan, it revives itself and grows physically more powerful. You must slay them 3 times before they will stay dead. In later games, this ability was nerfed to just be a self-healing spell that they would cast on themselves when at low health, and Oblivion introduced the Spriggan's Curse ability, a touch spell that drained health and luck on the player. These abilities were both carried forward into Skyrim and ESO, reflavoring the Curse aspect as a poison effect added to the Spriggan's melee attack. These games further evolved the Spriggan's toolkit by adding a ranged attack, which inflicts the same poison effect in a conical AoE, blasting you with glowing spirit bugs. Finally, beginning in Oblivion, Spriggans have the ability to summon natural beasts to fight at their side.
Oh, hey, Pikachu, I choose you! Go! Pikachu!
This is implemented as an actual conjuration spell, which just poofs a bear into existence. In Skyrim, this ability is modified to instead exert control over existing animals within a certain radius, though as Spriggans are commonly set to spawn in the same location as several animals, this change isn't much of a nerf in practice, and could actually be seen as a buff, since it means multiple beasts can be called to aid a single Spriggan instead of just one bear. In the Elder Scrolls Online, this power is reverted back to a summon spell the Spriggan casts when it turns hostile. However, the list of animals that can be summoned now includes a wide variety of different creatures rather than always a black bear. So, this is the suite of abilities we have to add to our Spriggan stat block. I started with a CR3 monster as a template. I chose the Dryad for reasons that should be obvious. I kept the standard Fey magic resistance and gave them immunity to paralysis, petrification, poison, and exhaustion. This is to reflect their nature as a kind of living construct, but also to reflect their portrayal in Morrowind, which gave them similar resistances to status conditions. I chose not to give them vulnerability to fire damage, as I feel this would be a significant handicap given how prevalent that damage type is. Instead, I had a few of their abilities shut down if they take fire damage, so the player is still rewarded for using flames. Kind's Whisper is their command animal spell from Skyrim, except I turned it into an automatic ability that affects any beasts that approach within 60 feet of the Spriggan. This includes mounts, animal companions, and perhaps, if the DM wishes, druids in wild shape. Depending on the party composition and how many animals you want to plop into the encounter, this has the potential to be a massive ace in the Spriggan's sleeve. I did, however, allow an escape clause by giving the beast a saving throw to break the charm if the Spriggan tries to order it to do something too heinous. For instance, commanding a ranger's animal companion to attack its master would give the beast a chance to shake off the effect and tell the tree lady to go suck it. The DC isn't that high either and can trigger multiple times, so chances are it'll break free sooner than later. It's just there to provide some good narrative tension. Sudden Regrowth is their healing ability, which triggers automatically when they start to turn bloodied, and restores half of their hit points, potentially bringing them back up to full health. This only triggers once and can't activate on a turn after the Spriggan takes acid or fire damage, so a shrewd player can ensure this never happens. Meld with plants is largely a ribbon ability, but could have tactical implications in a heavily wooded environment. The Spriggan can essentially phase through trees and other plants as part of its movement, and can even hide inside of a tree that's large enough to hold it, as Spriggans commonly do in Skyrim. This could allow the Spriggan to effectively maneuver around the party in a dense forest, passing through barriers impassable to players to strike and then retreat to a safe distance. Its action options are fairly straightforward. Its claw attack delivers a poison that deals ongoing damage until the player saves against it. The poison condition is a good analog for the drain luck effect of the Blood Moon Spriggan, as it gives the player disadvantage on many rolls. Spirit Swarm has much the same effect, but is projected as a conical AoE, just like in Skyrim. You take half the damage if you fail the save, but aren't affected by the poison. Finally, the Spriggan gets to cast the Conjure Animals spell once per day, or Conjure Fey in the case of the Earth Mother. As the DM, you can decide whether you want to use the 5th edition or 5.5 version of the spell, depending on how much chaos you want to add to the fight. If you allow a player to summon a Spriggan, I would encourage you to use the latter, or just remove this action from its stat block entirely. I trust I don't have to explain why. In addition to the 3 basic Spriggans, I added a few variants that switches up the game a bit. Ashen Spriggan is immune to fire damage and can move through earth and stone, including lava, instead of phasing through trees. Its abilities are themed on fire and are shut down by cold damage. When it regenerates, it also releases a damaging wave of heat. For thematic reasons, this creature counts as both a Fey and an Elemental, though I don't expect that to really make much of a difference in practice. A Shadow Green Spriggan is based on the corrupted Spriggans that appear in Cold Harbor and ESO. It counts as both a Fey and a Fiend, again for thematic reasons. Its ability to command animals, which aren't present in Oblivion, has been changed to allow it to charm Fey and humanoids that come too close. But this version allows a saving throw to resist it. Instead of phasing through trees, it has the ability to walk on liquids, which I thought was an interesting tactical change, considering how little vegetation grows in most Oblivion realms. Instead of Spirit Swarm, the Shadow Green Spriggan projects cold flames that restrain instead of poison, and instead of summoning animals, the creature can summon Daedra to his aid. The Colossal Spriggan is basically just a giant version of the common Spriggan, with a few alterations to its toolkit. Meld with plants is somewhat less useful due to its larger size, and the need to find proportionally massive trees to hide in. That said, with the height of some trees in Tamriel, particularly in Valenwood, this might not be much of an issue. Its slam attack pushes or knocks targets prone instead of poisoning them, and it has a simple ranged spell attack that also snares targets on a hit. Keeping with the theme of restraining movement, it also has the Entangling Vines ability, which allows it to cast Entangle once a day. However, the ability also lets it effectively recast the spell in the same location each turn as a bonus action, as long as it's still concentrating on it, so creatures that weren't restrained the first time can still be caught on a later turn if they stay in the area. Finally, I added some variant options for Spriggans with weapons, and also a Spriggan animal template if you want to have a Spriggan Giant Elk or Spriggan Dire Badger or whatever. Given the time limit on this video, I didn't add stat blocks for any other game systems like Pathfinder. If there's interest, I'll add those at a later date. Spriggans are fairly straightforward with regard to their role within the Elder Scrolls universe. Their chief purpose is to serve as guardians of unspoiled nature, temples or artifacts that are associated with gods of the wild. They are also tasked with punishing those who violate covenants with the primordial powers, such as the Green Pact, or seek to exploit or despoil the woodlands. In general, they have a single-minded focus on protecting the natural world and are generally unwilling to parley or bargain with intruders unless compelled, through magic, to stand down. They are intelligent and capable of speech, and seem to have some kind of culture or hierarchy among them, but Spriggans seem largely disinterested in anything outside their sacred groves, and are innately hostile to any notion of civilization or development by man or mer. They have been known to make deals with druids, witch covens, bosmer spinners, and other priestly types who respect the natural world and share their goal of preserving it. However, in many cases, it is implied that these bargains were entered into reluctantly, probably with the use of binding rituals or other magical restraints to prevent the Spriggans from just tearing the interlopers to ribbons on sight. As is common with fairies in most media, once the terms of the bargain have been struck, the Spriggans stick to the letter of the agreement with razor precision. As long as the mortals uphold the terms of the contract, there will be peace between them. Typically, this involves swearing not to harm the environment in a given area in exchange for guarding some treasure or forbidden knowledge, or simply allowing people to pass through the forest in peace. Mortal memory can be as fickle as a fairy, however, and it doesn't take long for the descendants of the pact-makers to forget and/or abandon their obligations. The players could arrive in a village thrown into chaos by the Spriggans of the local woodland, suddenly denying entry to anyone seeking to pass through, and viciously attacking any who dare try. As long as the Fae of the woods are up in arms, important trade routes traveling through the region are disrupted, and the people of the village can't hunt for wild game, or pick berries, herbs, or gather fallen wood for construction and woodworking. The PCs could simply exterminate the creatures, if they have the metal, or they could research the terms of the original covenant and find some way of repairing the rift between them. Perhaps the Empire or some other local power is threatening to burn the whole forest down if the issue isn't resolved soon. This would get the trade caravans moving again, but would devastate the local economy and likely force the people to abandon the village for greener pastures. If the party contains a druid, ranger, or maybe a bard, perhaps they can use their magic and affinity with nature to convince the Spriggans to listen and suggest a possible course for reconciliation. Another easy use for Spriggans, apart from just wandering monsters in a forest encounter, is as guardians of sacred sites or ancient lore. Y'ffre, Kinnereth, Herein, or even Mehrunes Dagon or Molag Bal might employ Spriggans, or corrupted variants, to repel intruders in their temples, wherein could be found a powerful artifact or closely guarded secret that is the key to a larger quest that the party has embarked upon. This works just as well with ruins buried in the forest, marshlands, or other remote natural environments which isn't strongly associated with a deity or demonic forces, but has simply been abandoned by mortals and reclaimed by nature. Perhaps a long-dead mage or archivist squirreled away some powerful relic or cursed item in a place they knew no one would look. Or perhaps a wizard's tower sank into the mud, carrying with it the dangerous fruits of his research, waiting to be rediscovered for good or ill. For a bit of lower stakes adventure, you could also utilize the Spriggan's ability to command animals to tell a story. Perhaps a rural community has been suffering since all of its livestock and pets mysteriously vanished in the night, with no sign of a struggle or evidence of a violent end. Since then, a few scouts have reported seeing some of the missing animals wandering in their nearby woods, obediently marching together as if following an unseen commander. The peasants who tried to enter the woods to reclaim their animals were mercilessly torn apart and left to rot in the sun without being eaten. If someone in the party has an animal companion or a prized steed, you could make the threat personal by having them join the ranks of the missing beasts. Through investigating the area, the party can discover the perpetrator is a Spriggan building an army of animals for some sinister purpose, perhaps trying to force the village into ruin by depriving it of its livestock so that the forest can reclaim the land. Or, as I mentioned before, Spriggans are a source of many valuable alchemical ingredients, including taproot, subtle roots, Spriggan sap, Spriggan's ear, and others. A rather simple incorporation of Spriggans into a campaign could be to have the party try to track down a Spriggan to harvest some of these valuable ingredients, perhaps to make a special potion or a magic item that they need to complete some other unrelated quest. Finally, the Spriggans' tie to the land enables them to serve as a kind of canary in the coal mine. Any strong influences on the land, magic or otherwise, will have an effect on the appearance and behavior of the Spriggans that inhabit it. Daedric or other corrupting energies can twist the Spriggans into new and more horrific forms, or compel them to become more aggressive and confrontational, in order to signal to nearby communities that something is wrong with the natural order. It is not impossible that the Spriggan might actually approach the party for help in repelling a threat to the forest that it and its sisters are unable to contain. If the party has previously dealt kindly with this Spriggan or acted to defend the land from its enemies, the Spriggans might trust them enough to aid them against a common threat that affects the entire region. If Spriggans who have previously been peaceful or bound by an ancient agreement suddenly become wild and destructive, this could also signal that something has happened that is compelling them to act against their nature. All of these options can, of course, be transported into any world that contains nature spirits of this sort, not just one modeled after the Elder Scrolls universe. You could even add them to a sci-fi themed campaign by having them be some form of alien mold or energy being animating a construct made of plant matter. This is just to give you a few ideas. Well, that's it for this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like my content, and check out the other videos on the Monster Week playlist from other creators. Until next time, I've been Chameleon X, reminding you to listen to those who speak for the trees.